You're listening to The Endless Party with your hosts,
Megan Elijah Armstrong.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to The Endless Party.
Hello, hello.
We're so glad you're here with us, and that is the honest truth.
What a great start to this
Thank you.
episode, Elijah.
So, episode 54, if you haven't already read the title, is The Honesty Party.
Let's be honest with you today.
Yeah. So, we wanted to talk about this for a couple reasons, and excuse me, I think my mic just went off for a second there again, but now it's on. So, we wanted to talk about this for a few reasons. One of the reasons was, as some of you might have known from our last episode, we just moved apartments.
We just moved.
Yes.
It was a big deal.
It was a big deal. And unfortunately, with our previous landlords, we, how do I put this delicately? We didn't rub shoulders very well.
No, and what it came down, and the only reason why we even bring this whole scenario up is because at the end of the day, it came back to us
Living by our principles
and making the best honest decision we could based off of our personal integrity.
That and just our situation in its entirety. So all of you should know by now, if you haven't, we had twin girls. And with twins comes just a lot to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of work, which is a beautiful thing.
We love our babies.
Yeah.
They're the best. I miss them now. They're napping.
They're napping. However, being in a basement apartment with two really rambunctious dogs and just a lot going on isn't ideal for your sanity, especially when you're having two babies that cry, because babies cry. That's just what they do. And so previously, when we signed the contract for our basement apartment, we made it very clear that we might be there a year, we might not. And because of that, we wanted to have some flexibility with our landlord, and they were more than happy to be accommodating to us. And the first thing they said is, absolutely, like, we'll work with you so long as
you get past 6 months.
Yeah, just get past 6 months and we'll work with you.
Sure.
And so we were at the 10th month.
Yeah,
the
10 month
mark.
mark. We paid rent 10 months.
Yeah.
And they knew we had twins. They knew we'd brought them home, and it was just getting tight down there.
It was getting really tight down there. And we have also made it known that there were some things in regards to noise and just other things that weren't very accommodating to us.
No, and it was just time to leave.
It was.
And that's just kind of
nothing to their fault. Like, that's just life.
It was just like the situation. Like, they couldn't change the place we lived in, and we just need to get out.
Yeah.
So we went to them.
So I called them and I just said, hey, we need to get out of this situation, and it's nothing against you guys. And interestingly enough, the husband was so great. He immediately was like, absolutely, like, no problem. Like, we totally understand your situation, and we did talk to you when you signed the lease that we'd work with you, so, like, no problem. Well, then a few hours later, I get a text message, not even a phone call or face-to-face, and it was like, hey, my wife just reminded me that you actually owe us more money because you didn't give us a notice, and
we're keeping
the deposit on top of that. And I was like, whoa, hold on, like, this isn't working with us at all. And so I gave him a call and I just said, hey, like, what's going on? Like, you guys said you'd work with us, and long story short, they were like, well, that's not in the contract.
So we were like, no worries, we'll go back to the contract.
Yeah.
And we found a breach, and basically we had been violating the contract for a while because we were only supposed to have 2 people there.
2 people living there.
We ended up having 4.
And because of that, it made the contract void, and we would have had to have moved.
Needless to say, this whole situation was really sticky, and it was getting kind of heated. Yeah. Both parties were starting to get upset with each other.
And so finally, we just moved house, like, boom, out of there.
Right, we decided it's best to move.
And so and then I finally, called him back, and I just said, hey, this is the situation, and with our values based on our beliefs, like, we're not going to pay this extra money for not living there, but we think it's fair that you guys keep the deposit, all things considered. Like,
because we did inconvenience you by choosing to move.
So this gives you at least another month worth of payment to be able to find new tenants. And anyways, it was still ugly, but we just stuck to it because we also believe in the principle of like being a monster and sticking to your guns and recognizing that you're not always going to please everybody.
Yes.
And sometimes you have to agree to disagree and realize that it's not a win-win or a lose-lose situation. It's a win-lose situation for both parties.
And I think too, the only reason why we bring this up is because, like, in life you think that every situation is going to have this like perfect closure.
Right.
And this was a situation where we didn't have this perfect closure, and both parties were pretty upset with each other, actually.
Well, it was pretty sad because we actually
were
pretty
great.
good friends with them, and like.
And we were both pretty flexible with each other.
Yeah.
And the 10 months there, like we said,
it wasn't bad.
It wasn't
and it actually ended up being nice because of our babies at the hospital, and we were so close, and things worked out that way.
Right.
But unfortunately, it just ended, and it didn't end on gracious terms, which was pretty sad.
No, but now that we're looking back at this situation, I think one thing that we're really thankful for is that we were honest.
Yeah.
And we called them and we told them exactly how we felt, and we told them exactly how we felt it was right to, end this situation and move, and
this reminds me real quick. There's always a little voice in the back of your head. It's basically like the devil on your shoulder and the angel on your shoulder that's like, you know what? Forget them and don't even call them. Just move and be done
and
with
leave.
it. And that's a huge temptation.
I mean, we really wanted to do that because it was already really ugly, and we were like, we're just going to make them more mad by telling them we're not going to be paying them extra money.
And we did.
And we did. They were more mad at us.
But that goes back to what Meg was just explaining, is that's what made us the honest part of us, the standing by
we gotta be honest with them. We gotta tell them why we're leaving and how we feel it's right to end the situation, even though it's going to make them uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable for us to have this conversation.
Wronged,
And I think I really like this topic and this example too, because I think something that's really interesting about honesty is that I feel like as a society, we lie or have the habit of lying to try to make people feel more comfortable.
Yeah,
does this
absolutely.
outfit look good on me?
Right.
What are you going to say?
Well,
are you going to be honest? Or are you going to are you going to say what makes people comfortable?
Right. And what's better in the long run?
And I've noticed it's always better to be honest in the long run. And I think another reason why we wanted to bring this podcast up is because it's really easy to tell little white lies to save face.
So easy.
To save face. It really is.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of time, for example, I think this is something that all of us do as a society is, if you're invited to something, sometimes you'll make up a fake excuse to get out of that invitation.
Yeah, to not go.
Instead of, and I'm guilty of it, I think everybody's guilty of it, instead of being like, hey, actually, this just isn't going to work and we're not going to be there.
Yeah.
And what's better, to say that or be like, oh, I'm so sorry, we can't make it because,
and that's actually what's
this
interesting
happened
too,
or this
is
happened.
You also say sorry, but in reality, you're not sorry.
You're not sorry.
And that's there's an event you don't want to go to and you say, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't make it. But
are you really
sorry? I mean, and that's something, honestly, we're trying to work on.
Yes, I'm trying to be a lot better at
just transparent.
This just isn't going to work, and we're not going to be there. But thank you so much.
And you don't even need to make an excuse.
No, you really don't.
Yeah, having twins.
It's the perfect excuse. You want an excuse?
Have multiples, man.
We show up to things and we're like, hey, we gotta leave because we have to feed the babies, which is actually
that's actually true.
That does happen.
That's not dishonest.
But people are always like, oh my gosh, of course.
Absolutely.
Just go. Yeah, you need to go. You have 2 babies. So if you do want an excuse,
have 2 babies.
Start the endless party yourself. Yes.
Yeah, but it is interesting. It also goes back to, I think, when people think of honesty, a huge person or a huge character they think of is Abraham Lincoln.
Honest Abe.
Yeah.
How cool would it be to be known as Honest Meg?
Yeah.
I was just an honest, good, Just
person.
good
But you know
going
what?
person.
Out of everything, she was always honest.
Like, that's cool to be like.
It's incredible, right? And so, like, what did you have to do in order to obtain such a powerful title?
Well, he must have always been honest.
Well, more than that, though, right? I was thinking about it.
Oh, what?
He had to be upstanding in all areas of his life, his principles, his values, because at the end of the day,
true to everything.
True honesty is in personal integrity.
Yes.
Right? So it's being able to keep your promises to both yourself and to others, to be a man of your word, to stand by no matter what comes in your way. It's actually pretty cool, because then you start to think, I mean, actually, I read his book. It's called Lincoln, not his book, but Dale Carnegie wrote a book because he just loved him. And it's called Lincoln Unknown. And he actually, his wife, so he was in love with, I think you know it better than I do, but so his first love was who he truly would have died for.
Right.
But she got really sick and she actually passed away. And then he promised a girl that he would marry her, and she was a nightmare. Like, he couldn't stand her. Nobody could.
She's really hard.
She was really, really hard.
But he made that promise.
But he made the promise, and he married her anyways.
My goodness. And that set up the rest of his life as such. Who you marry matters.
Who you marry matters big time.
Wow.
Right? And so we're not going to dive in depth on his life, but if you want to know more, that book's his great book. It's Lincoln Unknown. But it's just interesting because he was so devout to his values that he kept a promise to marry a girl who he was not in love with.
That's amazing.
Right.
Wow. And
I'm gonna be real. I don't know if I will ever be that honest, but yeah.
It's just interesting that, like, honesty is essential to developing your true self.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I think honesty starts with being honest to yourself.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm trying to develop. If I tell myself I'm going to work out today, I try to stay honest to that, like, what is it called?
That promise.
That promise I made to myself, and be like,
commitment.
okay, that commitment, and be like, I'm going to work out today because I said I was going to.
Well,
and if you're honest to yourself, normally you can be honest to everybody else. And it starts with you, I think.
Yeah, it's cool too. The sooner that you are honest with yourself and stop making excuses for yourself, the sooner you'll do the same for other people.
Pretty cool.
And it goes even a step further than that. So if you keep your promises to yourself, right? Like your commitment and your, like you what am I trying to say? It's like this, it just strengthens and fortifies your integrity as a person. Because if you're honest with the one person that you love most, which is yourself.
Everybody loves themselves the most. Me, myself, I.
It is so easy to be honest with everybody else.
Right. I think something else I wanted to talk about is people respond really well to honesty. If you're just honest and you tell someone, I'm going to be honest with you, and then you tell them the honest truth, normally they respond better than you making up an excuse or lying. And normally you won't get tangled, like, yourself into a web. For example, there was, like, in our life, I think we watched someone tell a white lie.
Yeah.
And what happened is it got, like, sticky and tangly, but instead of just, like, being honest with the person, like, in the first place.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And people usually respond pretty well, so I don't know why we're all afraid to be honest. And maybe we're afraid to hurt people's feelings, or I don't know.
I think it goes back to what you said.
But normally people respond pretty well.
I agree. It's back to what you said, though. It's habit, right? It is just as easy to lie as it is to tell the truth, but both are habit forming. And the problem is, most of us have formed the habit of a lie
instead of the truth. Interesting.
Even when it's just something as simple as maybe making a story a little more extravagant than it was.
Interesting.
You know?
I never even thought about
so
that.
So people, like, make it just a little more fluff.
Just to add a little.
Even though it's like there's no fluff needed. Like, the story was great even without it.
Yeah.
Right? And there's people in my life that I've seen do that. And it's and what's interesting is as soon as you see somebody tell a white lie and you know it's a white lie, you immediately don't trust that person.
So,
which is crazy
true.
because most, if not all of us, have told little white lies.
Yes, we have. All of us. I know all of us have.
Yeah.
And here's something I want to say. I feel like we talk about principles all the time on this podcast, but I just want to like put this disclaimer and being transparent. These are all principles Elijah and I are really trying to work.
Really hard.
We're working on them. We're not perfect, and I can't say that I'm perfectly honest. Am I trying to be perfectly honest in all that I do? Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
But anyways, okay, that kind of goes into this. When you see someone, have you ever also saw? Okay, let me rephrase this. Have you seen someone lie in front of, like, not to you, but to somebody else?
Yes.
And how does that make you feel about that person? So, like, let's say I'm having a conversation with you, and I see you lie to somebody else. You're not lying to me, but then it's like, could I trust you if you're being dishonest
with another person?
How does that make me feel about my relationship with you? Because I'm like,
how many times have you lied to me?
Right.
Yeah.
Anyways, and I think this kind of jumps into like one of my favorite stories of all time. This is the epic pot roast over the fence story. Honesty wins.
This is
a really good story. It happened at the old apartment, the basement apartment.
So, at our basement apartment, not only did our landlords have 2 dogs, but we also were surrounded by dogs in every corner.
Everyone had dogs around us. I don't know why.
Yeah. And then behind us, they just got a new puppy, and it was a pretty big puppy.
Yeah.
But it was so loud, and they were trying to kennel train it. And we didn't know that. But it was outside, and it was 12 at night.
I think it was midnight,
and it was 1 a.m. Like, it was bad. It was really, really bad.
And it was just whimpering and whining so loud.
So loud. And it's right outside our door.
Just like that.
Yeah, if you want to be up at night till 1 a.m., just put this on repeat and you'll know what we went through. Okay, enough.
See, I'm just showing them. It was annoying.
Yeah, it was that bad. Probably worse. Stop. So, anyways, I was like, I can't handle this anymore. And so I went outside and we had this leftover pot roast.
It was like so gross.
Well, it wasn't gross.
I thought it was kind of gross. It turned out dry. It wasn't my best meal.
Well, it was a good cookie. It wasn't bad. So immediately I just start hucking this pot roast in chunks like over the fence.
Trying to get the dog to stop.
And the dog like stops. I'm like, sweet, like I did it, Then it starts up immediately after.
So we just go to his parents' house. We're like,
yeah,
we
so
gotta
I
get out of
in
here.
my parents' house and just
like, we
sleep
can't sleep
we
here.
couldn't sleep at all, and it was awful. And so finally, I get a text from our backyard neighbor, and he's actually a good friend of ours. And he texts me, he's like, hey, there was like some leftover Costco chicken in my backyard. Do you guys have anything, like, do you know about that? And I'm like debating.
We're like, oh my gosh, are we gonna admit to the fact that I
threw
meat over the fence?
So I like start to question everything, right? And I even call my dad. I'm like, dude,
I don't know what to do.
What do I do? And he's like, just be honest. And I was like, you're right. So I immediately just call him, and I'm just like, hey, Sterling. I said, your dog was just super whiny, and I understand he's a puppy and like no worries, but I was just trying to get him to be quiet. And he's like, dude, why didn't you just call me? I was like, I actually didn't have your number until you just texted me. And so anyways, he's like, dude, it's no big deal. We were just curious because one ended up in my wife's planter. And
there's just like meat in his backyard.
He's like, next time just call me. Like, I have no problem like dealing with it. And I was like, oh, okay, like not an issue.
Right.
And his dog actually did it again, and I just sent him a text and I was like, hey man, like, can you just like put your dog in? No big deal. And he's like, dude, your wife's pregnant with twins, because she was at the time.
I was.
Like, I have no problem putting my dog in, and it was great. Like, he was so nice about it.
And that relationship was like totally maintained because of the honesty.
Yeah, instead of just being dishonest.
They're still like friends today.
Yeah, like I saw him today.
And yeah, you did see him today.
Yeah.
And it was like, hey man, what's up? There's like no remorse, even though Elijah legit threw me across the fence. I to him to get the dog to stop.
It was wild. But long story short, it is much better and it pays dividends.
To be honest.
It's the best investment, to be honest. Because at the end of the day, nothing can come back to bite you. Nothing, like, you don't risk anything by being honest.
Right. And I think if you start practicing the habit and changing the habit of being honest in the little things and like recognizing when you are telling those little white lies, then you can start really being honest in the big things when it matters. Making those hard phone calls, having those hard conversations, being honest in all things.
Yeah. It's honestly, starting with yourself. You know, if you told yourself that you were going to commit to something, like stay committed, like do it, follow through. And if you're able to do that, everything else kind of starts to fall into place.
Absolutely, I completely agree. So, thank you guys so much
for
joining us
thanks
today.
Thanks for watching. And until next time, be honest. See you guys.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Endless Party. Please feel free to join us over at our website, theendlessparty.com, for more of our content. Also, we would love to hear from you. Leave some comments and let us know what you're interested in us talking about.
Seriously, like, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, whatever it is the platform says to do, so that we can keep partying together.